All of us do not have enough time. But, 1 second. But we constantly get bombarded with new messages. So in this video, I want to take an existing chat application and build automatic summaries of unread messages on top of it. Here's how that looks. The user can see their messages, and once unread messages appear, they can tap on the "What did I miss?" button. The LLM will take the unread messages and summarize them for each channel, helping the user to quickly skim over what they have missed. We will take an existing Next.js chat application built on top of shadcn and use a locally running LLM to generate the summaries. With this, we will ensure that we have a good performance while also preserving the user's privacy. The way we implement this, however, we can also switch out the implementation of a locally running model to an API provider such as OpenAI, Gemini, Anthropic, or others. In a future video, we will even add audio summaries so that users can read out the summaries of the channels. So if you don't want to miss this, you should definitely like this video and subscribe to the channel. But now let's get started with the implementation of this project. We will provide the entire code for the project, and you can even clone a starter version of it, which is exactly what we will do now. So let's jump into the browser, and we see we have the repo here, which has the entire code of the final project, but we also offer a starter branch, which has just the code ready to get started for this project. So let's clone this. We have the URL here, so we click copy URL, and then we jump into the terminal to paste this command here, which says git clone. We want only the starter branch, and we don't care about the other branches really, so we add the single branch command and the URL to the repository. So let's clone this and switch into the folder. We see that worked, so let's open this up in VS Code. We could now run the project, but first we need to add some environment variables. So let's create a new file here. Let's call it .env.local. And here we need two values, the stream API key as well as the stream secret. We can grab this from our browser. We can go to dashboard.getstream.io. We can either create a new project or use an existing one. And we can copy over the key here and the secret. Signing up is completely free, so I will add this as the first link in the video description so that you can get started with your own project. So we copy over the key and the secret, and we're done. Now we can run the project by first installing all the dependencies and then running yarn dev. This will start a project on localhost 3000. So let's navigate there, and we see this is the project running. We have the channels, we can scroll, we can send messages, whatever we like. So the project is set up correctly, and now we can continue with the next step. Now, before we get started with coding, we need to first ensure that we have a local AI running. Now, there are many options for this, like Llama CPP, Ollama, and many more. But we, in this example, are going with LMStudio. You can swap this out for the others if you're more familiar with them, and I will tell you where specifically you might need to adopt things. But for now, let's look at the browser and head to lmstudio.ai. And now we can download LMStudio, which I have already done. And once this is installed, we get this UI here, which I think is quite intuitive. So what we can do here is we can now select a model we want to load. For this, we need to first look at the models that we have. I have downloaded quite a few. If you don't have that, you can click Discover and search for models. For example, if I want a Gemma model, I can find these with different sizes, like the 4 billion option or this 27 billion option. It will even tell you whether this runs on your device or not. For example, this one has this red indicator here saying this is too large for my machine. But I downloaded a few models already, and I was testing this with the Gamma 3 1 billion parameter model, which works great in this use case. So let's head to the developer option here, select a model to load. Like I said, I'm going with the 1 billion parameter Gemma model, which we load. And then we can hit this status indicator to say this is running, which now gives us a port on localhost, the port 1234, which might be different if you use other providers. But with this, we can now call this API with these endpoints and get results from that. Feel free to experiment with different models or different applications for this, but this is just one that I've used and I'm quite happy with it. So with this, we have the local model running and we can continue with starting to implement the functionality. So with that, we can jump into VS Code. But before we do that, I want to quickly mention that for this project, I've been using shadcn as a library. And if you're not familiar with it, this is how it looks. You can go to ui.shadcn.com and it's basically a component library that's built on top of Tailwind, which has a ton of components which you can browse through and easily import into your projects. So if you're interested in a demonstration of how I built this chat application on top of shadcn, let me know in the comments. But for now, let's jump into our editor, VS Code in my case. And for now, we want to start with building out the UI so people can tap on a button that says, what did I miss? And can then see the skeleton that will then call the summaries. Let's add a new component here in the components folder, which we will call unread message summaries.tsx. This is what we will show once we have unread messages. If we don't, we will not show this at all. First, let's close the sidebar because we need some space for this. And now let's go step by step over how we can implement this component. So first we create an empty component, we call it unread message summaries, and we will return something. But for now, let's add a bunch of imports, which we will use in a second. Of course, we want to have some parameters that we put into the component. So let's create a type for that first. And this type is going to be unread message summaries props with the loaded channels. So we want to have the channels that have unread messages that we put into this component. And then we also need to have a user element. Then we add this as parameters to the unread messages summaries component so that we have the loaded channels and the user ready for us. Then we create a channel summaries object. That will be an object which has a channel name and the summary. The whole thing is going to be an array. So for each of the channels with unread messages, we will have an object for a summary. Then let's add a section first that will encapsulate all of the content that we will add over time now. And first we start off with an alert dialog. Now let me quickly show you this. This is a shadcn component and it's called alert dialog. And what happens is if you tap on show dialog, you will get this pop-up that we will use to enter a table there. And you can then hit cancel or continue and act upon that. So we will use this specific dialog. And first we add a dialog trigger. That will be the button that says, what did I miss? Then we add the content of the alert dialog. So this is what will be inside the pop-up. We add some styling to it. We have a header which says unread message summaries, and then we have the description followed by the table that I showed you in the introduction. So for the table, we will have a table header with two columns, one that says channel, one that says summary. Then we have the body of the table where we map over all of the channel summaries that we have, put them into a table row, and for each row we have first a table cell that says item.channel name. Remember, this is the type that we have defined at the top here. And then we have another table cell that has either a number of skeletons if the summaries are empty, which indicates a loading state for us, or if that's not the case, we simply show the item.summary if the string is not empty. Both the table and the skeleton are again shadcn components. So we can take a look at the table here and the skeleton like this, which has this nice shimmer animation for a loading state, which we will use. All right, so we have the summary showing, we have the name showing, so that's great. So let's continue with the footer. So we have an alert dialog footer as well, which will simply have the close button so that we can close the pop-up again. Now, we have not added any logic, so we don't have anything to show for yet. So let's scroll up here and let's add at least a loading state after tapping the what did I miss button. So for that, we create a new function, call it fetch channel summaries, which is going to be async for later. And here we add a try catch statement. And first we check inside the channels that we have. Remember, this was the parameter that we have handed into the component. First, we filter those by only the ones who have unread messages. And then if they are empty, we don't do anything. If they're not empty, we now map all these channels to the data structure that we have for this channel summaries object, and we initialize them with the channel name and the empty summary. Remember, when we have an empty summary, we will jump into this case where we will show these skeletons of a loading state. So after we picked up these placeholder summaries, we now set them as the state. And the final step that we need to take is actually fetching these channel summaries, so actually executing the code that we have just defined. We can save now and take a look at how our project looks at the moment. So let's switch the browser and we see the button is not there. That's a pity, but I know why. Because while we have defined the component, we're not actually displaying it yet. So let's switch back to VS Code and go to our custom channel list. I will add a link to the documentation how to build custom channel lists and much more in the description of the video. But for now, let's just scroll all the way down to a component that we call custom list container, which is just our customization of the list of channels that we see at the left of the project here. So inside here, we show the headline of channels, and then we show a scroll area, which is all the children, so all the channel elements. So just below this channels element, we can now enter a code that says, if unread messages exist, which is a check that we're performing here, and if there are actually loaded channels, we want to show this unread message summaries object that we still need to import. And if we save this, we can now switch back to the browser and we see our button is now showing and we can click it and we will see these loading indicators for each of the channels. And for now, this is all we got because we have not yet implemented the call to the large language model that will actually create these summaries. So let's do this next. So with that, we can finally start the implementation of calling the AI. And for that, let's jump back into VS Code directly and scroll all the way down in our unread message summaries component, because we will add two helper functions first and then call the whole thing in the code. So we first create a function which we call get summary for channel. We will hand in a single channel and we will return a promise of the channel name and the summary. Again, this is the type that we use to display the summaries. And then we will call a get unread messages function for the channel because we need to hand these unread messages to the AI. We don't have that yet, so let's define that next. We get a channel as an input and we return an array of strings, so the array of the messages. And for that, we first extract the messages from the channel state. We then count how many unread messages we have, and then we return the messages. We slice them so that we only have the last few messages that have been unread, and then we map each message to have the username as well as the text. We add the username because this might be relevant for the context so that the AI can summarize correctly who texted what. So with that, we have the unread messages done. So we can now actually call the LLM to get the result that we want. And for that, we use a simple fetch call. This is where I want to mention again that for us, this is the localhost with port 1234, because this is what LMStudio is exposing for us. But if you use another tool, this might look different. But what we will do, we have a post request, we have a header, and then we start constructing the body for the request. And here first we have messages. And the first one is going to be a system message, so a primer for the AI, what it's supposed to do. And we have this text here which says you're handed messages from a chat channel. Please summarize them in 2 sentences and ensure there's no missing information. Respond only with a summary that is relevant to the user and no boilerplate. This is an interesting request because we don't want any other info as a result, but we will take one more step for that in a second. The second message that we send to the AI is actually the unread messages. And this is going to be now a user role with the set content. Now I said that we want to have a specific output, and for this we can use one more feature which is quite cool, which is called response format. So we get structured output here. And for that we can define a JSON schema, and for us this will be the name summary response. We want this to be strict, so only this output, and then the schema looks like this. We have an object which has the following properties: a summary of type string, and we set this summary property to be required, because if we don't get a summary, the call is not really useful for us. Then we check if the response is not okay, then we throw an error. Otherwise, we extract the data, so the JSON from the object, and parse the message into a content object, and then structure this as having the channel name and the summary, which is our data type, and we return this. The code for this is quite straightforward. It's basically just an API call. And if we wanted to switch this to have a remote API, such as from OpenAI or Google with Gemini or Anthropic, we could always do this. And the structure of the call would still be the same. So we just would need to change this URL, which I think is very convenient. So with that, we have all the logic ready, but we're not calling it yet. So let's, after setting our placeholder summaries, let's also add the logic for the call. So for that, we create a summaries object where we say we want to have a promise that returns once all the calls inside have finished, and we will map over the channels with unread messages. And for each channel, we call the function that we just created called getSummaryForChannel. After this is done, we simply set the channel summaries to be our newly retrieved object. We save, and let's test if this works. We switch to the browser and we see the button is still there. So if we call this, we first see the skeleton that will again indicate our loading state. And after a while, it will actually show summaries. So this works flawlessly, just as we expected, of course. And we see summaries of all the channels. There are multiple Blues channels, but this is just the setup that I have. So these actually do exist. We see the summaries here, which look quite good. And they are short and precise, just as we requested. And when we tap close, everything is working as expected. We have taken an existing chat application and added a very useful feature for our users with the power of AI. We have integrated this feature flawlessly into existing UI with the help of shadcn. And the cool thing is that we can actually switch things up quite easily. So if we don't want to use a local LLM anymore, we can easily swap out the URL and use an API provider instead. I want to end this by saying that this is only the first part. In the second part, we will add audio output for these summaries so that users can even let an AI read out the summary that we have generated, which is going to be a very cool feature. So if you don't want to miss this, then like this video, subscribe to the channel. This will come very soon. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you next time. Bye.